Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us and all of the work that all of the folks did to put the photos up, and we really hope that you have time to take a look at those photos, and hopefully some of the quick stories that I'm going to share today can help you bring those photos to life. And with the hope that we can continue the conversation, and maybe someday that you can actually go there and experience it yourself, which is the best way to do it. I also want to acknowledge and thank you for the financial support that Northminster has provided Seraj. I believe you have given over $3,000 since 2018, and we really appreciate that. We like to have these organizations, especially churches, be part of our work. And we also have Galen and Burkhart here today from St. Luke's in Evanston as well. That's also a church in Evanston that's very supportive of Seraj. So we want to say thank you for that. And Diane, yes, of course. and. As I was listening to the sermon today, I was thinking about my time in Palestine as it was just like one long mountaintop experience. I just had experience after experience that was really amazing. I was a CPS teacher in Chicago, and then I went to work for the central office downtown and ended up getting laid off in a reorganization. And both my brothers called me and they said, you would tell us to travel, you need to go travel. So it was 2015 at the time of the refugee crisis, of the Syrian refugee crisis, and I was trying to go there. I had been teaching a lot of refugees in Chicago, but the way it worked out, I ended up in Palestine. So I was in Bethlehem for a few months, came back here thinking I was done. I volunteered with the Lutheran, I'm Lutheran, volunteered with the Lutheran schools there in Bethlehem and Ramallah and Jerusalem. Came back here and there were budget wars between Bruce Rauner and Michael Madigan, couldn't get a job, and I got offered a job in Nablus on the West Bank. So I went back and worked at a school there for 2 years. And it was an amazing experience to live in Nablus. Nablus is in the very northern part of the West Bank. If you hear about a lot of the things going on in Jenin, where Israel is doing a lot of raids and bombing, Nablus is just down the road from there. So Nablus is not a normal tourist destination. That's where Jesus met the woman at the well. But other than that, there's not a lot for Christians to go see. So it's a very pure experience in that sense. Yeah, the Samaritans are there. Yeah, that's another cool story. But you can't talk about anything having to do with Palestine without acknowledging really the situation that's going on today. And I presume that you all know to some degree what's happening in Gaza, but I just want to paint a little picture of what's happening on the West Bank, because that's often not as well publicized. Since October 7th, when all of this began, Israeli forces have killed at least 380 Palestinians on the West Bank, injured 4,270, this is all according to the New York Times. 4,700 Palestinians from the West Bank are detained by Israelis, most of them without any charges. 3 teachers from the school where I worked are currently being detained. A lot of times families don't know where their loved ones are. It's a really horrible situation. I found some information back in December when there was the prisoner swap. Israel released 240 prisoners. Most of them had never been convicted of any kind of crime. 170 of them were teenagers. 5 of them were 14 years old. Every family has a story of somebody being detained, imprisoned, killed by the Israelis when you're there. I felt like a lot of my time I spent bearing witness to that and listening and sharing the lament really with people. There are 694 checkpoints and roadblocks right now on the West Bank. the money that the government uses, like to pay teachers and to pay police officers and everyone who works for the government, has been frozen because Israel controls that money. So people are not getting paid. Norway has come in to help with that. And then there are just raids happening all the time. I spent a lot of time in Bethlehem at the Lutheran hostel there. Some of you, if you've been there, might have stayed there. There's a man named, we call him Mohammed the Lutheran. He was raised there at the orphanage, and he sends me a lot of messages and videos, and he has 2 little boys, and Israelis raided his home, put a gun to his head, and told the little boys if they moved that they were going to shoot his father, and he is the sweetest, kindest man you could ever meet. All right, let's talk about Seraj a little bit. Some of you may know, some of you may not, that Seraj started here in Chicago. Estefan Saleme is from a small village in the West Bank called Jifna, and he came here to North Park College to go to school, and he met his wife-to-be, Lori Milner Saleme, who is from the suburbs of Chicago. So they met and got married, and Estefan was so struck by libraries in Chicago and in the U.S. that they decided when they went back to start their family and their life in Palestine that they wanted to open some libraries. So that's kind of how Seraj got started. And that was about 20 years ago. So since then, Seraj has opened 13 libraries. Most of them are very small spaces in communities, and they had a very intentional process of getting those libraries started. There had to be a community partner, there had to be a space that the community was willing to maintain, and there had to be people who volunteered at the library. So it's very much a collaborative model. But they found that a lot of those libraries weren't really being sustained because it was hard since they weren't really as present at the libraries. Like some of them really flourished, some of them didn't. So in the last couple of years, Seraj has opened 2 very large centers. One in Birzeit, which is where a very well-respected university is in the West Bank, and one in a village called Kufr Aqab. Let me just check my notes here and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. One thing that's kind of cool about the small libraries is because of the situation that's happening right now, there are a lot of settlers on the roads, there are a lot of Israeli military, so people are very cautious about traveling from town to town or village to village, so they're staying home more, and that's resulting in the libraries becoming kind of revitalized and people wanting to spend more time there. So that's actually kind of a good thing that's come out of this, is that the communities are asking for more support and wanting to revitalize those spaces. Seraj has 8 people on staff. Lori Saleme is the executive director. She's the one who's from here originally. She's really, she speaks Arabic. Her kids are very bilingual, Arabic and English. She moves around. I've visited her many times. She moves around as a person who's kind of a native person in a way. She's really amazing. The second, really employee of Seraj is a young woman named Fida, who is a professional storyteller. And she's absolutely amazing. She was here for the last benefit, or maybe the 2 benefits that we had. And she is amazingly trained, and she really has a gift of storytelling. Palestinian culture is very much a culture of oral tradition. There are lots of stories that families share and that communities share. And she has actually studied with the premier storyteller of Palestine. In addition, she has a degree from Georgetown University in storytelling as well. So she's a real amazing person. And then the other person that I know well, who is also a full-time employee of Seraj, is named George. He's a former music teacher, and he oversees the new center in Birzeit. And then they have like 5 other people that I'm not even sure who those people are. I was able to visit several of the libraries when I was living over there. I went to the library in the Aida refugee camp in Bethlehem, and it was really great because when you're in schools in general, like, kids don't like to sit still oftentimes, as you probably well know. Palestinian kids, I think just because the trauma that in the air that they breathe, they have an even harder time sitting still. So I went to this event on a Saturday morning at the Aida refugee camp in Bethlehem, and children were sitting in a circle, and Fida started to tell her story, and they had a ballerina, a woman from Jerusalem who had come, and she was dancing as Fida told the story. And these kids were absolutely captivated. It was such a beautiful thing to watch them. They just, they followed Fida, and they followed the ballerina, and then the ballerina got them up dancing, and it was just an amazing thing to see. Another library is in Taipei, which is a Christian village. There's actually a very famous beer that's brewed there. I went to their library at one point with Lori and Estefan, and they had a woman from the community who did a read-aloud book with the kids, and then they had taken, I don't know how they did it actually, they had a black and white, huge, like a copy of some of the images in the book, and the kids just colored those images together. And the kids, I always said as a teacher, when all the butts are in the air, you know that there's good stuff going on. The butts were in the air. The kids were totally into the coloring. The parents were kind of huddled around saying, oh no, you should, well, I think that's what they were saying, like color this or color that or what color. And it was just a wonderful thing to see this community of people together doing something fun with their kids around books. And that's just kind of how it goes with the libraries. Hold on. So the Birzeit location was open about 1.5 years ago, and it's in the old city of Birzeit, which is absolutely beautiful. It's as you would imagine an old city of Palestine to be. It's all rock and or stone and all these like little cozy spaces. And it was had been kind of abandoned, and there's an organization in Palestine that renovates sort of ancient spaces. So they got this organization to collaborate with them to renovate the space. And it's a courtyard. And so it has 6 separate spaces, and like one space has a children's library, one space is kind of a technology lab, and then they have other spaces as well. They also have a cafe. George, the music teacher, is also a cook. So they have like a limited menu. They have a space up on the roof where you can go and sit. They have umbrellas. It's just gorgeous. What's happening right now is Birzeit University is all online. And internet connections in Palestine are not always that great. So there's a lot of students who've spent a lot of time at the Birzeit location because they can do their remote learning there. They can also do kind of group projects and things like that. They also have started doing music therapy with kids, and Lori was actually telling us yesterday that she started doing arts and crafts with very little kids too at the library. So there's just a lot of different things going on. They also in Birzeit have a performance space, since George is a musician. When I was there, he had 2 young women who were singers, and then he played the keyboard, and then they had an oud player, which is a traditional Palestinian string, kind of like a guitar, and they were playing beautiful music. Another thing that Seraj does as kind of part of their structure in Palestine is they give scholarships. And the scholarships are to young people who want to attend university. I don't know exactly, but there's a very high education rate in Palestine of men and women. And Lori just shared with us yesterday that there's kind of a record number of applications, despite, she said, trying to make the application as arduous as possible. So if you are at all inspired to give, that is one way. They're looking for the scholarships to be between $500 and $1,000. That makes a huge difference at a Palestinian university as far as tuition goes. And she said most of the students who are applying for the scholarships are, the parents are unemployed right now, so that's basically their only way to go to the university. The wonderful thing is part of the scholarship is the students have to spend a certain number of hours at the libraries. So like when I was there with the ballerina and Fida, there were these young men doing all these dance moves with the little kids, and I thought, wow, that's really cool that these guys are coming. But it turned out they were scholarship recipients. So it's a wonderful way for them, the young people, to get involved in the libraries and give back, and then also to help fund their education. Kufr Aqab is the other big center that we've opened recently in the last year or so. And Kufr Aqab is a village right on the outskirts of Jerusalem, but it's outside of, so the Israelis have built a big security wall, and Kufr Aqab is outside of the security wall, and it's the only place where Palestinian families can live if one spouse has a Jerusalem ID and one spouse has a West Bank ID, because otherwise, Jerusalem people are not allowed to live in the West Bank, and West Bank people are not allowed to live in Jerusalem. So Kufr Aqab is gone. I think apparently it was like earlier like maybe 10,000 people, and now there are over 100,000 people living there. Palestinian police are not allowed there, so there's basically no policing, except the Israelis go in to arrest people. So it's a very difficult place to live. It's very under-resourced. There's a lot of fighting and stuff going on. So Seraj opened a library center there, and it's really amazing. They call it the Storytelling Center. They have, Fida has a 3-year, I think it's 700-hour course that she teaches on storytelling. They just graduated their first class, and that's a collaboration with Georgetown. She has just published the curriculum that goes along with that. And it's 300 pages in Arabic, so if anybody's interested, I looked on Amazon, it's not there, but they're gonna try to get it translated. So that's a really, the other thing that they have started doing recently is offering yoga classes and breathing classes. And right now, it's mostly women who are coming. I think the men need it just as much as the women, but it's a wonderful way for women to gather and to do something that is physically, kind of relieving of all of the stress that they're experiencing. Okay, that was 18 minutes, so they told me I had 20, so I have 2 more minutes. Just a couple of other things that Seraj is up to. There is a new, they call it a memorandum of understanding, where Seraj is going to go into the schools on the West Bank and do yoga and storytelling with teachers and with students, which is really wonderful. Another thing Lori shared yesterday, and I experienced this when I was there, the gentleman who's the Minister of Culture for the Palestinian Authority is from Gaza. He was in Gaza when the war started and was living in a tent with his family and just came back to the West Bank apparently 2 weeks ago. He's a very interesting man. He is very supportive of Seraj, even though they can't really fund anything. But he helps kind of make things happen sometimes. And one of the things that they're doing is he has facilitated them going into homes for developmentally disabled adults and for elderly people. And they play music, they dance, they sing songs, and that's a really wonderful way to share community as well. I think I missed one of my notes here. I just wanted to share with you the Seraj mission, because it is books, but it's more than books. Seraj is seeking to work alongside Palestinian communities to establish libraries as safe, beautiful, and vibrant community centers to promote Palestinian cultural heritage through the use of art, music and storytelling.